what gene it concerns, the terrestrial scientists and researchers have to find out themselves, for our directives prohibit direct explanatory interference in foreign cultures and civilizations, in terms of progress, etc. Billy says, good, accepted. So no other question about it. As it now stands with the climate of the Earth, however, it is always said that this is warming up. Does it actually become warmer? Quetzal says, the year 2001 will be the warmest one out of the previous 200 years until then, and global warming will still continue even after that. On the one hand, this warming has already been happening for decades through entirely natural processes and phenomena of the Earth and the Sun, as I already explained once before, and on the other hand, it also occurs through the unreasonable interference of the Earth people on the climate, through air pollution and consequent production of a greenhouse effect. Billy says, Samyasu once told me something in connection with the movement of matter and light. Quetzal says, I can remember that because I was there when she told you that light can move any matter, and that actually does this. Billy says, thank you. Yes, that's it exactly. As you know, I've gathered and calculated a lot with regard to the Christian calendar. You have also told me that I had calculated very precisely and that only small errors were contained in my calculations. With respect to these calculations, I have endeavored again and recently discovered that the actual birth of Jmmanuel must have taken place not 4, 6, or even 7 years before the Christian calendar but rather 5 years. This means that Jmmanuel effectively must have seen the light of this world 5 years before the Christian calendar. Through a past viewing, I also discovered that at the time of his birth, not only was a beaming spaceship visible in the sky, but also actually a very large comet, which could be seen all over the world, namely for about several weeks. Quetzal says, your explanations are correct. And since you alone have now found the true facts, nothing more stands in the way for me to tell you further details. The exact year of Jmmanuel's birth was 5 years before the Christian calendar known today. At that time, there actually was a very large and unusually strongly radiating comet that was observable from the Earth, which we call the Fruitful One, because from very early times, inseminations for the Earth and for the planet Phaeton, respectively Minoa, have gone out from it, by what means life could develop on these two SOL satellites. The Fruitful One, however, has an extremely long period of revolution on a path that leads far out into the Oort cloud. Accordingly, it will take more than 11,000 years, according to Earth's measure of time, before a return of this comet occurs in the SOL system. Its orbital period is 13,200 years. Together with this event of the appearance of the Fruitful One, the birth of Jmmanuel also took place on the 3rd of February, 5 years before the Christian calendar, whereby the 3rd of February of today's calendar is converted for the time and the day of that time. At that same time, when Jmmanuel was born, in order to monitor and supervise everything, a large Pleiar and beam ship was stationed high in the atmosphere over Bethlehem. This radiated very brightly, for it was one of those aircraft that collect energy from the atmosphere, which light up, radiating very strongly, when they penetrate into the area of the processing system, through which anti-gravity is produced. Billy says, aha! Then I still have one last question. Here in Switzerland, as well as in other countries, people who kill another human being under the influence of alcohol or who knock another down and kill him with a vehicle, like in the case of my brother Carl, who died at the beginning of the year in this manner, are only very mildly punished. When a person is knocked down and killed, if the driver of the vehicle is drunk, usually only very small fines are imposed on the respective death driver, as this happened when my brother was knocked down and killed. The driver of the vehicle only received a fine of 300 francs, that was all. In the maximum case, if it ever has to come to this, a very short term of imprisonment might be imposed on such a death driver, which is so ridiculously short that it practically can't be seen as a punishment but as just a state holiday. What do you think of this, and how would your legislation judge these things? Quetzal says, Our laws clearly stipulate that if such an act was committed in a drunken state, then it would equal a serious felony, which would also accordingly have to be punished very harshly. Such an act is, in fact, a clearly deliberate act of murder, for if a person gets drunk on alcohol, he very well knows and is aware of the fact that in his drunken state, he loses control over himself, over his mental competence, and over his reactivity, etc. But in the case of drunkenness, the cognition of this knowledge and this responsibility to be borne is deliberately disowned, whereby disasters, accidents, misfortunes, and crimes are casually accepted. Therefore, a person in a drunken state is undoubtedly fully responsible for his actions and deeds, and so he should also accordingly be punished, harshly and impartially, like would any other delinquent and non-drunken and, thus, sober and fully conscious person, just as every crime is included in this. So drunkenness is never a reason for a reduced sentence, but on the contrary, it is a reason for severe punishment, when a criminal offense or even a felony, such as murder, is committed. A reduced sentence can only ever be given when there are actually mitigating factors present, like with true mental incompetence. However, such is not given in the drunken state, namely for the explained reason that there is a prior, conscious knowledge of the potential disaster, misfortune, accident, and crime. Billy says, so in the drunken state, each form of killing, such as a crime resulting in death, etc., is effective murder. Quetzal says, that is correct. So it is also held in our laws. Billy says, aha, and I thought that you only had weak alcoholic drinks and no more people who get drunk. Quetzal says, you misunderstood something. We have very weak alcoholic drinks, but the alcohol content is so low that it can only be measured as a small fraction of a % of alcohol content. Therefore, it isn't possible that a person could get drunk on alcohol, not even if he could drink several liters of such a drink. Nevertheless, we still have an old conventional legislation that governs alcoholism, as well as intoxication by alcohol and acts of every kind that are committed in this state. So when one is killed or a crime is otherwise committed or when any harm, accident, or misfortune is caused. But this legislation is already more than 5,600 years old and has never had to be put to use since that time when our alcoholic drinks were reduced in their percentages in such a way as I explained to you. Moreover, the people of our world have learned and have adjusted themselves to get by without alcoholic drinks, for these are not necessary for a normal and healthy lifestyle. Of course, wine, for example, can have a health-promoting effect, if this is enjoyed with measure and a goal, as this is also the case with other substances, but on our part, we have so aligned our food toward the highest possible health values that we have no longer needed alcoholic drinks for more than 5,600 years, which also eliminated the dangers of evil caused by drunkenness. Blee, oh, I see. I've actually misunderstood something there. But could I expect that you, and maybe even Papa, would drink a glass of wine with me, if I were to find you one? Quetzal says, nothing should prevent that, if it is a rare or unique case. Billy says, of course, for I wouldn't want to make you alcoholics, which I myself also wouldn't want to be. Only, until it has come so far that I can enjoy some alcoholic drinks again, due to my collapse on the 4th of November, 1982. Some time will still pass, because for the time being, it's just impossible for me. Later, it will probably only remain a rarity, if it should once again come so far that every now and then, I might actually be able to drink a glass of wine or a small glass of liquor, if I can bear with my medication, but I must still leave this question open and cannot answer it yet. The future will show me what will be. Quetzal says, if it should be that you can take in some alcohol again, then I will confer with Papa regarding your proposal. Billy says, of course.